And I do remember feeling discouraged. I'm like, you're way over here in medical trade publications. How do you get back, to what that dream was? And I definitely felt like I was never going to get there. Like, I feel like when you do take those chances, like the universe affirms, you standing in who you are. Everything starts with how you feel about yourself, whether you believe in yourself, you believe in what it is you want to do. Like, nobody's road is just a constant, ascent. And it's going to be a lot of peaks and valleys. And you're going to have to, pick yourself back up. There's going to be no, sometimes there's going to be people who don't get it. And also, those quote unquote rejections don't even always have anything to do with you. Hello, this is Brande Victorian, and you are listening to Dreams and Drive.
Hey, Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 378 of the Dreams and Drive podcast. And today our guest is Brande Victorian. So Brande is a freelance writer, producer, and on-camera correspondent who's known for her storytelling and her viral human-centered celebrity interview. Prior to becoming a contributor for The Hollywood Reporter, she was the senior entertainment editor at Essence Magazine and the content director of the women's division at iOne Digital. And Brande's connection to me is she was actually one of the first editors I ever worked with when I used to write for MadameNoire straight out of college. So being able to have her in the guest chair today is just so inspiring. And I'm just so grateful and humble that she is on here telling her journey, how she was able to put her media dreams in drive. She's someone who I think doesn't get all the flowers that she deserves. So I'm just really grateful to have her in the guest chair and excited for you all to just learn from her career and just learn from all the insights and stories that she shares about what it means to be a dream driver. Remember, if this is your first time listening, welcome. Make sure that you are subscribed so that you get notifications every time we have a new episode. And also, if you want to join our email newsletter and get weekly emails from the Dreams and Drive community, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. All right, let's hear from Brande.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I am so excited. As we were speaking offline, you had been on my list of people that I wanted to talk to for so long. When I first started as a freelancer, right, back in 2000, I don't remember when I started writing for MadameNoire. I think I worked with you a few times with some stories. When you were editor over there, I worked with Victoria and Veronica a bit and Tanya Garcia. Do you remember Tanya?
Oh, yes.
Yes. And so I've always just kind of watched your career from social media and just have been so inspired by you. So I'm really happy that our listeners today are going to be able to hear your story. But first off, right? You hop in the car, you put your seatbelt on, girl. All right. We about to go for a ride, all right? Okay. But you're in the driver's seat. So we're going to be driving to Toledo, Ohio, right?
Do we have to?
That's a long way from Los Angeles where you are, and a long way from New Jersey where I am. But we about to go to Toledo, right? I want you to take me back to the 8-year-old Brande. What was inspiring you back then growing up in Toledo?
That was third grade. I was writing a lot then. I loved to read as a kid. And I remember that I was starting to write stories. I don't think I was into magazines yet. I think that came a little more preteen age, but I used to draw like magazine catalogs of like clothing and that, which, I'm very into clothes now. And, my mom would take them to work and her coworkers would make like fake orders of like the that I drew, which I think about that now, like I barely would get some Girl Scout cookies, from like a coworker. But even just thinking of like that type of encouragement, at that age, like says a lot. I think about them. So yeah, I guess I really did have a creative interest, even from that age, which really aligns, with where I am now.
You know what's so crazy? I think it's so like eerie. All the people, when I ask people that question, the things they say, I'm like, those were things I was doing as a kid. So I had this little yellow notebook and I used to draw fashion designs in it. I didn't sell it to anyone, but I would like have my friends sign in the book the one that they wanted and we would pretend that I made it for them. But it was just so funny how like maybe all the people on the show, we all could be like a secret cult of best friends as kids. Who knows, right? Growing up, did you have a big dream for yourself?
I think once, I'm trying to think. I knew like New York was a dream. I'm trying to remember when it was a dream. I know I did want to go to college. I wanted to go to FIT, but like we couldn't visit when I was in high school. And so it was like, I'm not going to go to a school I haven't been to, and it's so far, from Ohio. So I do think once I was into magazines and I knew, I wanted to work for magazines, I knew I wanted to be in New York. Like that was kind of my dream.
Mhm.
And I just saw that happen, which it did happen. So that I think that was kind of the biggest thing of like, I just got to get to New York. I want to be a magazine editor. And that,
You know what? I would love to hear what was your idea of what New York was like. I say that
yeah.
because I grew up in the New York City area, so I feel like it was never romanticized to me because I could always go there. I was always there, but I'm always curious as to what other people thought about it.
Girl, it really is when they talk about Sex in the City. Like I definitely, okay. I moved there, at 22, right after I graduated college. And I'm like, I'm going to be dressed in nice and fancy. I'm going to have a beautiful apartment, going around, all the culture. Didn't expect the bear, didn't expect the mice, the rats, none of that. The cost, that was just never, a factor. The one thing though, everyone back home be like, it's not safe, and that I never felt unsafe. I can't even think of a time I really felt unsafe in the 12 years I was in New York. So that, as much as crime is shown, there was never like a hindrance, but it felt like that is where you have to be, for this writing dream.
But we're going to get to that because I think for you, you really were able to live like your wildest, journalistic dreams in New York City. But if we're in the car, let's say we're in the car and we're driving from young Brandy going into adult, going into college. What was your sense of self like? Because I think like this journey that we're on, even where we are today, the foundation for our sense of self either changes over time or we grow into it. But do you remember how you were feeling about yourself as you were kind of growing into who you were as a person?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of insecurities. I think, one just being like plus size, as a teenager, always kind of been plus size to like high school, people was like, you didn't like high school, did you? And I'm like, I did it. And not that necessarily bad happened, but kind of as you asked about New York, I thought high school was going to be like Saved by the Bell, and just like fun and this popularity and dating and all that stuff. And that just was not, my reality. So I was like, I'm ready to get up out of here. and, but I think even like with skills and things, I felt like people didn't necessarily pour into the talent, that I had. Even when I think of like, I went to University of Cincinnati, but when I went to my counselor, they were like, oh, you should just go to the University of Toledo. Like they'll give you scholarship money, and I had like a 3.7. I'm like, I'm a decent, a good student. And there just wasn't, I felt like, yeah, just the encouragement of like seeing your dreams and like, my mom didn't go to college, so there were things, she didn't know about that experience. And that, so yeah, a lot felt like kind of alone and like people couldn't relate, to my experience. And I think in college, a little more confidence came, but I mean, if I'm being honest, I feel like I wasn't really secure in who I was until I was like 30. And I remember
Wow.
for me, that became of like, you need to make a choice. 30 feels like the grown woman age. And I'm like, you can't be a grown woman and you don't like yourself. You're not confident, in yourself. And so I just started to try to focus more on like, the good qualities and thinking more about that than, oh, I don't like this about myself or, whatever else kind of thing. So yeah, it was actually quite a long ways, to I think having a healthy sense of self-esteem.
But you mentioned that you felt like people weren't really not respecting your talents, but weren't really pushing you in the sense where you knew you were. What was that thing that you saw within yourself? Because that's a good quality. Because sometimes we could have just accept what people tell us that we should be doing, right? And it
Yeah.
seems like you were like, no, I'm gonna go after what I think I'm. You had some sense of
Yeah.
like, I know that I'm worth something, and what y'all trying to
Yeah.
tell me is not it for me. So what was that it that you saw within yourself? Although you still had some insecurities.
Yeah. I think so much was, growing up a single mother, my mom had to rely on people, for help. And I just never wanted to be dependent, on other people. It's not, people talk about hyper independence as a trauma response, which I prefer. That, but even, some moments of even people helping, throwing that back in your face. And I'm like, I'm not going through that. I'm not going to have that experience. So I do think it was just like, I want stability. That's what is always been important to me. I want stability. I want to be able to provide for myself. I want to be able to only rely, on myself as much as possible. And I think that has been like the biggest driving factor.
You went to University of Cincinnati, you got your journalism degree, and then what? Like you didn't have the big New York City dreams just yet, right? Or what happened?
No, I did. So, and then what happened, you're graduating, everyone's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. I'm moving back, to Toledo. And the day I was leaving my apartment, I got an email for this company, Walter School Health, and I had sent them my resume and that for editorial assistant position, and they asked, could I come to New York for an interview? And you talk about tears, like it just was crazy. I was literally getting in my car to drive back to Toledo. And so, they asked me to come for an interview. I think I came like a week or two later. I took the bus to New York.
Was this the 16-hour bus ride?
The 16-hour, exactly. That 16-hour bus ride, and got the job. So I moved to New York 3 months after I graduated college.
Big dreams, right?
Right.
What was it? What you expected? The career part, building the career, right?
Yeah. It's different. I think, I do think at the time I knew what a privilege it was because I remembered hearing stories from people, who had journalism degrees and either they never got that entry level job. And so they took another, path and never kind of came back around to it. Or, you got that job, but you were doing like menial things, getting coffee for people. You never got the writing experience. And I can say right out the gate, my reporting, they had me writing stories. I was going to conferences, traveling for things. And I will always say that just was so invaluable because, just learning how to write, that was painful, that feedback initially and things to work on. And certainly, science and health was not a subject that, I was necessarily great and proficient in, but learning to write and report and the opportunities that it gave me, I think it laid the foundation, for me now. So I can say like, in the time there was gratitude, but then there was also like, you wanted to be at Essence. Like that was also the dream. I should have probably said that earlier, but that, was the dream because that was the only, Black women's publication at the time kind of growing up. And I remember I met someone from Essence at the time and she was like, oh girl, people don't leave Essence. So like,
you gotta wait.
Exactly. Good luck. And I do remember feeling discouraged. I'm like, you're way over here in medical trade publications. How do you get back, to what that dream was? And I definitely felt like I was never going to get there. And
but was there a lesson you were learning during that time there? Like, was there something that to this day you needed to have that experience because you took it throughout your career?
Yeah. The reporting for sure, 100%. But I also think about, when things were not going as well, at that job and I was ready to leave, I had interviewed for a position. I think it was at the American Cancer Society. And they offered me the job. And I just remember kind of as we were talking about, like, if you continue further down that path of health and that, how do you get to, what you said you wanted to do? And I remember I turned down that job and I ended up moving back home. I was freelancing. I had started to freelance for MadameNoire at the time. My mom was like, if you want to come home, you can come home. So I moved back to
listen, free rent or whatever. It's cheaper than New York, right?
Exactly. Kept my stuff in storage. I was like, I'm coming back. I don't know how soon. But I moved home for, I think it was 6-7 months. And I feel like that to me is probably why I've been able to take a couple more leaps later because opportunity just came. And it was like, I took that chance of pursuing what I really wanted to do and taking that chance that it would come, to me, which it has. And so I think that was a really pivotal moment.
And I think a lot of people don't often listen to themselves, right? Like they know they shouldn't. Like someone else would have been like, you know what, I'm gonna just accept the job. And then 20 years later, I'm just using this example. I have a friend who is a doctor.
Yep.
Hates it. But she's like, I put so much time and money, but part of me was like, you never wanted to be a doctor, right? So imagine if you had made that switch a little bit earlier. So it's really nice to hear you just talk about like you had to really listen to yourself. There probably were some, risks that you had to take, but that was a huge pivotal one because you ended up at probably, I'm saying from an outsider looking in, a great place to be like entrepreneurial within the job and just so much opportunities. So tell us how you landed this job at MadameNoire, which is where I met you. And, I
Yes.
think has been a foundation for what you've been able to do with your career since.
Agreed, 100%. Madame Noire was looking for a freelance news writer while I was still at Walter School of Health. And I had done some writing on the side. A friend of mine from college had started a blog. That was the blogger time, 2008. And so I was getting, at least some clips doing that for free. And then when the Madame Noire thing, I remember it was on Craigslist.
Wait,
But girl,
it's grown, right? It grew.
exactly.
You have to grow. Craigslist.
Exactly. Yeah. And I found the editor at the time, her name, and I applied through Craigslist, whatever they said to do. But I sent her just a separate note. Hey, I'm very interested in this. Here's some clips. And I remember her getting back to me pretty quickly. And I think it was like to do 2 or 3 stories in the morning. So I would go to the office early, write my news story to Madame Noire, and then do my regular job, during the day. And I feel like I did that maybe 3 or 4 months or so. And then, with having that, I moved back home. And I think someone had left also at Madame Noire that they had. So that it was almost immediate that they needed me to contribute more, which was perfect. And also, I started writing for like Clutch magazine, which was another.
I remember they were big back when I graduated. I graduated from college 2013. They were like the it blog to write for.
Exactly. And that editor had also been working like Five Vixen was trying to make a comeback at that time, a couple other sites. So she had me write for them. And so it was just, again, like taking that chance, and then just kind of the flood of opportunity came in. And then, after 7 months, MadameNoire was like, well, we'd like to hire you on full time. I was like, yes. And I came back to New York.
So how does it feel to be getting into this new car, the car that you always wanted, right? Yeah. Did it feel like it was supposed to feel? Did it smell like it was supposed to feel? Or were you like, hey, this is a little bit different for me?
It did feel like I can literally remember I was in, my bedroom at my mom's house, and I was writing. And I was just like, oh, this is literally the dream that you had. It was in essence, which was all my dream I had because that was all that I knew was possible. But now we're in this era where there's a bunch of different Black women's outlets, and you're working for one of them. And I was like, this is literally what you dream. And this is why, even now when doubts and things come, it's like you literally are living the dream, that you had, and you've made it happen, several times. So it looked different, but it looked good. Like it was something I didn't know to dream, I guess, that there could be other outlets and other opportunity, and even coming in there and just being able to make an impact, so quickly. That editor decided, she wanted to move it to more video or so. So like in 6 months, I became the deputy editor. And I remember even that I was scared to go out for it, because when I become the editor in chief in the medical realm, the experience just was not good. And I was like, I can't have that again. I feel like you're not, valued or respected in your position. And, that I ended up, going out for it, and I got it. And that wasn't, my experience. So it was really more than I could have imagined, to be honest.
What did it mean to be a deputy editor? Because I always wondered, I used to submit my stories to y'all. I'm like, what are y'all doing on the back end? I could only imagine you had like 20,000 WordPress tabs and editing stuff. Literally. I'm just like, what were the things that you were doing? And then what were the skills that you were learning that you were just adding and putting in your trunk? Like, listen, it's a new skill. I'm going to use it some other time.
Yeah. My biggest thing at that time was timeliness. Like, I was like, we have to get these stories up and out before someone sees them somewhere else. Because they're not going to care about them, if they've already seen it. But also, I think the great thing, you mentioned Veronica and Victorian, they were at MadameNoire, before I was. They both have such great, like, opinions and thoughts about things. And I do think MadameNoire really made a name for not just aggregating content, but having an opinion about it, and sometimes, or quite often, I think it was controversial. But it was a lot of conversation. And even, we built Did Y'all See around that later, which was a video series, talking about these conversations. So it was a lot of vetting, pitches coming in, a lot of pressure too. At that time, it was always the more content, the better. We were under the shadow of gossip, I think, for a little bit, and trying to make sure that, the tone of our site was a little bit different, that we were respected. But also just the celebrity opportunities. When I think of people we talk to and how crazy, like, you could just be going about your day and then somebody's like, oh, we have more chefs now, he could stop by for 15 minutes in between. You're like, what?
So, Dream Drivers, I'm a few months into this mother of two life changing diapers every day. Luckily for me, I'm a pampered Swaddlers mama, so I don't have much to worry about when it comes to changing time. Did y'all know that Pampers Swaddlers features a blowout barrier at the back waist to help prevent up to 100% of leaks, even blowouts? So I can rest assured that I will have superior leak protection while keeping my baby skin healthy and dry. And listen, need a hot baby shower gift for parents to be in 2024? Gift an online diaper fund with Pamper diaper stashes so you can gift a diaper stockpile that never has to run out. It's the gift that always fits, taking the guesswork out of choosing what size and how many diapers to gift. And it's easy to use. You just create a surprise diaper stash account, share the link with family and friends so that they can contribute, watch that stash grow, and then you can gift the stash to the parent so that they can buy Pampers diapers and wipes whenever they like. And I wish I had this for my baby shower because honestly, it just allows others to contribute in a way that allows us parents to buy what we need when we need it. Getting them physical diapers is cool, but that diaper stash fund puts that ease of flexibility back in the hands of us mamas. Pampers, thanks for the new ways to allow friends and family to say, we've got you. Dream Drivers, you know in today's world, it seems the best treatment is reserved only for a few. Well, Discover wants to change that by making everyone feel special. That's why with your Discover card, you have access to 24/7 live customer service as well as $0 fraud liability, which means you're never held responsible for unauthorized purchases. Finally, no matter who you are or where you are in life, you'll feel special with Discover. Learn more at discover.com/creditcard. Limitations apply. Dream Drivers, for me, there is nothing better than showcasing my joy. Our friends at Frito-Lay know that joy is bold, vivacious, and contagious. Joy gives life flavor, rhythm, and vibes. And when joy takes flight, it can't be contained. It is robust, more than a smile or a laugh. It's an infectious experience. So here's to all the creators that inspire us with your creativity and passion. Let's keep filling the world with joy. And make sure you look out for the My Joy campaign, powered by Frito-Lay.
So, so now later I remember Spike Lee, like back then, when you think of, now I feel like access is so difficult. And then I just feel like you could get anybody almost, to come by. And that says a lot, I think, too, to even appreciate Black media, like that. So the days were crazy. No days were like...
I always wonder that because I even feel like, why do you think it was so much easier back then? Do you feel like the relationships were different or just the way people viewed media was different? Or Black media, I should say.
I know. I think about that all the time, and I don't know if I have come up with an answer, but
well, good thing you were back. You were there back then, right? Because you got all the stories. You have that experience.
You're right, and I do think the attitude toward it was a little different. I think it felt lighter and less pressure and more playful. And I wonder if maybe, as stuff started to get more traction and spread, people were like, oh, like we kind of need to gatekeep this too, a little bit. People pay attention to what's on these blogs, and then publicists will kind of come in and, shut that down. And I think a lot of mistrust. I think a lot of Black media gets put into this bubble of it's all gossip, and people, talent typically doesn't like gossip blogs and that sort of thing. And people don't distinguish as much as they need to from that. And then I think a lot of just mistrust kind of came into play, and like, oh, I'm not going to touch, that stuff at all, which is not fair. For us. And there's, hurdles I think you have in Black media that other, legacy publications don't have. But I think that's a big piece of it.
Yeah, I remember. I like that. I used to write for MadameNoire Business, and I remember Tanya was trying to grow it out at that time. And I was just casually on MadameNoire the other day, like putting in my name, trying to see all my bylines that are still up there. Yeah. And I forgot that I interviewed Erica Dixon she had like a hairline, right? And it was just like, wow, like, we were doing things back then, and these celebrities were like talking about different types of topics on that blog. So even for me, I'm like, y'all were doing a lot of stuff, and it was really cool to be able to just write. I was bad on getting my things back on time though. So I will say, I was probably one of the people you had to email like, Raina, where is this article? But, as you were growing, as you were rising the ranks within MadameNoire, was there anything that you felt like, did you ever felt like I could be doing more? Or were you kind of happy where you were? Like, what were you thinking about as far as advancing and the future of your career at that time?
Yeah, absolutely wanted more. And not even necessarily for me, I think for the brand, because, I think it was 2015, I think we were the number two site for African Americans, 2016, the number one. We beat out like BT, which had a whole, TV platform. And I remember there was a lot of like internal excitement. And I thought that that meant we were going to continue to pour into the brand. And, eventually it became evident that that wasn't the case. And so for me, that's when I really had a hard time because I just felt my core is serving Black women. You over here talking to me about why am I not including Black men more? Like, that's not my job. And that's not what this platform is for. I'd be happy to help with a brand, that's for that. But there's so much more that MadameNoire needs. Even, events we were trying to build out. And so much of that was like, if you can get a sponsor for it, you can do it. I'm not a salesperson and
Yeah, it's
I'm
like I'm trying to write good stories, not
exactly right. So it's a gift and a curse where like, yeah, you get that relationship and you can do it, but that shouldn't all be your responsibility. And again, I just think it was a lot of missed opportunity. So yeah, that, was a big piece. And then when we were bought by iOne Digital and it came to being, now we have Madame Noir and Hello Beautiful, which are very similar brands. How are we distinguishing? I feel like internal politics there. And yeah, it was just time to go.
I can imagine, but one of the things I feel like you were probably, at least from my perspective, you were also developing and making sure you were establishing the Brande Victorian brand and making sure people knew who you were. Do you feel like you were? Or like, how did that work as you as an editor, right? Because you would think of like Anna Wintour, right? People love the editors. Do you often feel like you had that same respect or that same clout that should come with being like the top person or at one of the top Black female, media sites?
Yeah. I feel like when I talk to people like you and that, they see me in that regard. In the workplace, I've never been made to feel that way ever. Someone just asked me, they were like, when did you start to feel respected in the workplace? I was like, I'm still waiting.
Because I was looking at your website, girl, like
Girl.
you've done like, I'm like, damn, like, I'm not trying to say you should be, in some posh office, have what, someone feeding you strawberries, but at least for someone who's been in the media game, it's like, you are like, you actually know your ish. Like, I was just watching, I shouldn't, I'm not going to say a name because one day I might work with her, but someone who won an award for a platform that they have, right? And they were arguing with someone about whether or not they deserved it. Okay. And it was just interesting. I'm just like, there's people, y'all shouldn't even be on this list. Like, there are people who are legit doing real. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. That's like, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, it's a real human response. And I can say, I think as I even thought about this question, I'm like, there is a certain level of intentionality I think that you have to have. And I don't think that I have had that. I've always felt like, oh, just do the work, be quiet. People will see it. Like I would share what I did. But I do think there's people who are very good at positioning themselves in a certain way and as an expert. And I don't think I've been as good as that, good at that. And even as I say that now, I'm like, you still have a chance to do it. And you're not,
No, but so, listen,
yeah,
ain't no, but you still gotta get
yeah, it's a real time conversation I'm having with myself. Because I do want to have that respect. And I think because I know that I can deliver on it, just as you were saying, like I don't need to be called a digital architect or something like, just for ego's sake.
Creative like, change maker.
Exactly. I want to have that impact. I think even just partnering with entertainers to feel that safe space. Like, I just think that's so important no matter who you are. It should be us, I think behind the scenes kind of making that happen. So yeah, I feel like it's on me in some instances. But it is unfortunate that I do think in a lot of workplaces as well, there's a desire to reap, I guess, benefits from Black women as your consumer, but not elevate, the Black women who are making that happen for you internally. And that is disappointing.
This episode of Dreams and Drive is brought to you by McDonald's Best Burgers Ever. McDonald's classic burgers are hotter, juicier, and tastier than ever before, so much so that Hamburglar is on the loose. The patties are cooked to juicy perfection, the cheese is perfectly melted, the Big Mac sauce has more special sauce in every bite, they're topped with a pillowy, soft golden bun. These are truly McDonald's best classic burgers ever. Or in the words of the Hamburglar, robble robble. Grab McDonald's Best Burgers Ever before Hamburglar does at a McDonald's near you. This episode of Dreams and Drive is brought to you by the new Peacock original, Kings from Queens, the Run DMC story. The 3-part documentary series explores the never-been-told story of hip-hop's iconic forefathers, Run DMC. From meeting on the streets of Hollis, Queens, to breaking barriers and legitimatizing an entire genre of music, Run DMC's legacy spans decades. After a series of life-changing events and challenges, including the murder of Jam Master Jay, Rev Run and DMC reunite to tell their story and celebrate the one-of-a-kind sound that took not only Queens but the world by storm. With exclusive interviews from Joseph Rev Run Simmons, Daryl DMC McDaniels, and hip-hop legends like Ice-T and Questlove, Kings from Queens, the Run DMC story dives into the origins of a group that changed music forever. Kings from Queens, the Run DMC story is streaming now, only on Peacock. Hey Dream Drivers, this episode of Dreams and Drive is brought to you by Mickey D's. So you guys know a full cart of what you want in the Mickey D's drive-thru is just the right amount of chaos. So I've had times where me and my girls have been out, had a fun night, and a night is never complete without pulling up to Mickey D's drive-thru, right? And you're all in the car and you're trying to figure out, hey girl, what you want? And everybody is either ordering some McDonald's fries, you got to get a McDonald's McFlurry if you want. And also a warm chocolate chip cookie. That's my go-to order, right? So I have all these great memories of just being in that McDonald's drive-thru with my friends and just being able to end the night on a high note. And one of the things I love about ordering late night at McDonald's is you will not be breaking the bank, right? So it's just the perfect way to end your night. Everyone's got their own Mickey D's moments. Go on and make more delicious memories. And you know what I wonder too, as you talk, like sometimes I tell myself that too, because I feel like I have the knowledge of like how the business works and I have like relationships behind the scenes. But I may not be that person who's going to be putting in the work to make sure everyone knows about them. I think there's two different plays there. But is it better to be behind the scenes pulling the strings? Or do you think you still need to have that in front of the scenes? Everybody knows who you are.
I think it could be a mix because I think there's some of those people who are like, people just call you, they're the go-to. You never know who they are. And they have that internal respect and they're fine with that, which I think is great. I feel like it probably depends on your goals. Like if you are trying to maybe build a business to get new clients, you are going to, more word of mouth and, some media coverage and things like that. So I think that is where you have to really sit and think, what is my ultimate goal? Which is also something I'm trying to figure out. Because I think I've done so many little things and I enjoy all of them, but it is like, what are you pressing toward now? What is your kind of pinnacle goal? And then I think that kind of determines how you approach.
If you don't mind sharing, what have you been thinking about as you've been thinking about the ultimate goal? And then we kind of keep the car moving to the other parts of this house you got to get to.
Yeah, I have realized that I do really love interviewing people. And I think I felt like I didn't, but because I was doing so many other things, I couldn't be as present. And I realize now when I can be present and take that time, I love it. And I love the things that people, will share with me. And so I'm trying to, push myself, like, would be enough to do interviews on your own, like just make that ask, for people. If they say no, they say no, maybe your feelings, but it's whatever. And somebody will say yes. So I do think that that piece is really important for me. And I think particularly, now with like Hollywood Reporter, it's a different type of reporting. And I do miss, some of the more personal and like lifestyle conversations, and just the connection with Black women, to be honest, that came with Essence. So that is a big piece.
So you got to Essence. Like we don't have to spend a lot of time at Essence, but you were I forgot. What was your role at Essence? I just want to make
senior entertainment editor.
Yeah. Why did you I feel like that was the dream for you, right? How did it feel being there? And then eventually, why the decision to embark on a new journey?
Yeah, it was the dream job. I did things there I did not imagine, doing, didn't even realize, what all the job entailed, particularly like the booking of the covers and carpets, your Oscars and things like that. Just incredible experiences. I think that being said, it was a lot to be able to do all of that. It was constant. And, no assistant. It was, I had freelancers, that I could rely on, but there was no number two or person, to pass off a lot of things to. And I knew early on, I was like, man, this is not sustainable, which is a kind of a painful realization to make. But, I wasn't taking care of my stuff at all. And I didn't feel the reprieve was not coming, and I didn't feel the appreciation, either. And so there's a certain point where it's like, it's kind of clear this isn't going to change. And you're prolonging, kind of this painful experience, for you in the moment. And, Hollywood Reporter, that opportunity came up, and it was again like, okay, it's a leap. Like, it's not, full time, thing necessarily. It will sustain you. You're going to have to figure out some other things, as well. But, what could that mean? What doors, could that open? And so, and I know myself, again, liking stability. I was like, if you don't take the leap now when you kind of have something that can anchor you, you're not going to leave. I will stay in something too long. And so I was just like, see what's in front of you, and take that leap.
There's a lot to unpack there. The first thing that I think you probably had people in your ear, or maybe people might have said, but you going to leave them for them, right? Like, and I say that, and I think it's something that we as Black women often get a lot of flack for. And it's like, why? Like, why do let me think about how to frame this question. But not saying you did the work for the culture, right? But can't you, isn't it okay to explore new things, right? Like,
exactly.
And I think that sometimes we get looked at funny if we're like, oh, are you selling out by going this way? Yeah. But what's the real narrative there, right? And how has working at the Hollywood Reporter now really just opened up new doors, new opportunities? Not saying that those you're selling out, but it's just like, there's new things. Like, you started out in medical, right? Like, medical rights. Yes. So like, they can't say anything to you. Like, listen, this wasn't even where I started out. So
exactly. And it's funny because I just hosted this panel the other day, and this Black guy came up to me. I was like, I just want to get your information. He was like, it's good to know there's some flavor, over at Hollywood Reporter. So, I think even there's excitement we have of just seeing, ourselves in spaces, where we're traditionally not. And I will say, I mean, even the co-editor in chief, Nakasa Moody, is a Black woman, so there is representation there. But I will say, I think they're great at giving me space for certain stories that's like, you probably are the best person, to talk about this. Maybe we didn't have, a younger Black woman's voice before. And now, we have that, and you're bringing something extra, to the storytelling. I think that definitely happened with, oh gosh, I can't think of the show now. Never mind. But I just remember, they were like, oh, you have like 15 minutes for an interview. We ended up being on the phone for like an hour. Wow. It was just like that connection. Yeah.
And you have the experience that I just feel like working when you could interview a Black artist, like, I feel like there's just so much that if you can handle all different types of personalities, you can handle anybody. All right. Like, 100%. Our people are flavorful and multi-dimensional in all aspects, right?
Exactly. And, I think it's a tricky thing of desiring, I guess, mainstream coverage, and things like that. But that does open up opportunities for you, as an entertainer, to get that coverage there. And, what deals can you get now? What other, roles and opportunities? And so I think there's still, a place there to, again, serve, Black people, through this platform, which also is a trade publication. So it's not even, consumer, magazine. It's in a totally different space. But I think I also was fortunate that in this climate, I think people get Black women are tired. So I think a lot of people were kind of like, girl, good for you. Like, I don't know what sparks this and what's going on behind, but like, you're choosing you in this moment. And I can only imagine how difficult that was, but like, good for you, So I've appreciated that support.
Yeah. I've I've heard that so many times, like even working at like the company I work at and like the division within our company, it's like the people who work there sometimes just say like, we're tasked to do so much. And it's like, just because I can do it doesn't mean that I want to do it or that I should be doing
Exactly.
with like, do you feel like it's because we're Black women that it happens and we just keep like, like, what am I'm trying to say without saying the name, but like, why is it that sometimes the Black arms of things, I'll
Yeah.
say that, right? Why is it that we're always the ones that are overworked or underfunded? We're just,
Yeah.
like overlooked, right?
Yeah.
It's
I think
disheartening at
it's a
times.
yeah, I think it's a few things because I think workplace in general is like that. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember that this male editor, I'd asked him, "Oh, can I give you my info, for freelance?" He said, "Oh, I would love, but we've just been given a second magazine to do and no more editorial budget." Like it's just kind of become commonplace that you can tax people, like that. I think the difference sometimes is we won't speak up as much. And that's because what happens if we do speak up? I can name, I don't know, maybe one or two times I feel like in my career where I really spoke up and was heard and like change happened. So is that putting a mark on me now? Am I going to lose my job for speaking up where I do think, sometimes at least white males for sure, but I'm not doing that. I'm taking on the extra stuff. You cannot put that on me and like having those boundaries and not feeling guilty about it. So I think that's kind of the mix. As for structure, I think there's a lot to be said there as well. When we talk about sometimes chasing kind of the white capitalist mindset, even when it comes to businesses, that are owned, by Black people. And I always feel like we don't have to replicate, exactly what they're doing. You can invest in your people. How big do your profit margins have to be, and
Yeah.
I'm not a business expert. And so there's some level of ignorance there, but we're not playing often with the same amount of money. We don't get the same amount of funding or even have, that same ground swell of money, starting out. So that does make things difficult. And particularly if you only have a Black audience, you don't have as much market share, for advertisers. So
Yeah.
they you mainstream budget. So there's a lot there, but I would like to see where people decide I'm going to treat my employees differently because I know what this experience is to be a Black person in America. And like, what you're facing. So your salaries, your bonuses, your time off structure, holidays, all that, we can be different at this company. And like, I've yet to see that.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, that could be a whole nother. Let me steer us back on track a little bit because I'm just personally interested in that stuff. But I really want to just pick your brain a little bit. I hate that word, pick your brain, but I really want to pick your brain just for people listening in because you are, I would say, a master interviewer. You've interviewed hundreds, maybe thousands. I don't know, right? Of celebrities, people. What have you learned about what it takes to get a good story? I say get a good story because I think there's an art to being able to get someone to open up. But for you, what has kind of been something you've done or something you've learned along, over the past few years about how to really get these people to create this, to help you create the great content that's gone viral?
Yeah. It starts with the research for sure. We all will get pitches and it's like, that's not the full story. You have to do some research on your own. And I feel like when, the nuggets that have stuck out the most in different interviews have been, things I've personally been curious about knowing or something just kind of on a whim of finding, a connection, to that person. Like I think about Marlon Wayans when I'm like, his favorite movie was Bridges of Madison County, which is like one of my favorites. And I tell you, that interview was not, that man was tired. He was tired of me. And I just was like, you know what, to wrap this up, I randomly saw this. Is that your favorite movie? And we ended up being on Zoom for like another 30 minutes. And that was when he talked about, his romantic life and then why he
And
was
his
never.
mom, the quote about his mom.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's sometimes like taking that chance on a random, kind of question. But if I hadn't read, that was like a Us Weekly story he did years ago. If I hadn't gone into that background, like I wouldn't know that. So I don't think you can underestimate just the time. Whoopi Goldberg, I remember I watched so many of her interviews. I was so like intimidated. I didn't know, how she would be. So just, that prep. And then I mean, just being natural, as possible. I feel like I have so much respect, for their time. You don't know me, probably don't want to talk to me, about things. And I think there's a fine line between, getting information about what people want to know, but like respecting that these people don't own me, their personal lives, all that information, and not being intrusive, with it, but giving people an opportunity for something they may want to get off their chest. Because I think a lot of people do want to set the record straight, about things as well. So it is a fine line. And I think it takes time. If I looked at some old interviews, I probably wouldn't cringe, at that. But I do feel once at Essence, when I was so overwhelmed constantly, and then having to go jump on an interview, it was just like, this is what they're going through. And like, so I need to make this a good experience, for them as well. And that kind of fuels my approach.
And I think even like leaning into your essence, and I know like, you have your own platform, Be Enough, and it's like our sense of self, right? And when you really can be solid and confident with who you are, and I think that's always an ongoing, not saying struggle for a lot of us, but I think about, I want to make sure I'm getting this right. You were on a red carpet with Rihanna, right? And then she said she liked your outfit, right?
She did.
And then I looked at it as from, what if you had worn something that you didn't feel confident in, right? Or like you were, right?
Listen, and I almost didn't wear that because I was like, lie.
But like Rihanna said she liked him. Rihanna's the queen of style in my head, right?
Exactly.
But I feel like that speaks to you owning who you are and saying, I'm going to show up on this carpet as me. And Miss Rihanna, the queen, really was like, girl, I love the outfit, right?
Yes, exactly. And I'm so glad you said that, because that was a moment. Like I walked in, I remember the videographer was like, where you go? Go. And I was like, yeah, because it was 11 o'clock at night. Like I literally put that on just for that. But I was like, it is Rihanna. And like, this is a moment. And when will you talk to her again? Never even dreamed, of talking to her. So yeah, I agree. And I do have to challenge myself, because sometimes I'm like, oh, I want to do this to have this moment. And you get closer and you're like, is it too much? Or am I going to stand out too much? And yeah, push past it. Like, I feel like when you do take those chances, like the universe affirms, you standing in who you are.
Was there ever a time where you messed up really bad or it was just like, wait, this was a fumble? How did you kind of get out of that? How did you navigate that? Because I could imagine working with celebrities and just doing interviews that sometimes, like you said, Marlon didn't want to be on the phone, but he ended up giving you more. But when it doesn't always go well, how do you fix that?
Yeah. I had one with like Queen Latifah, which I really regret. And I was rushing to the point of preparation. I was rushing trying to read this press release. And I didn't realize that they were talking about different shows in that same note. And so I said something to her like, oh, this is produced by so-and-so. And she was like, this is produced by me. Like, what are you talking about? Right. And I'm like, of all the things of like not giving this woman credit and just being wrong. And like, she was fine, but I don't know if I'd recover that moment from like the embarrassment of it. And it was that lesson of like, girl, don't do that again. You need to prepare. Like, you got to take that time. And I will say sometimes that means saying no, in the moment, because even yesterday I got an email where it was sent at 8:50 a.m. and said the person was available between 9 and 12. What kind exactly? And it was it would have been something light or whatever. But sometimes you just have to say, like, this is going to do this person a disservice and me, by taking something too quickly. And they should respect you enough also to come back with time so that you can prep, for that as well. Yeah. So that also, one thing, one of my old coworkers, she's always like, the opportunities always come back around. And I can say that for sure. They always come back around. So you don't have to feel like you have to take something that isn't necessarily the right fit or at the right time for you if you're not going to be able to do it justice.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I forgot to ask you about was just the physical move, because New York had been this place that you had really built your foundation. You spent 12 years and then you decided to move to Los Angeles, right? That's a whole different culture shift as far as I know. Everybody I know who like moves from New York City to LA, they go through a time of transition, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think sometimes making these physical location shifts along our journey are really important as well? Alongside the career building, but like the actual physical change.
Yes. Oh, I think it's right? Yeah, because I went to Atlanta in between. So I left New York and went to Atlanta. Those 2.5 years, and that I felt like in that moment, I've been in New York 12 years. I felt like I didn't have anything to show for it in terms of, can I get laundry in my apartment? Just basic, things to feel like I'm growing, I'm progressing, I'm elevating. And so I moved to Atlanta. And in my mind, I was like, yes, I'm ready for like a calmer lifestyle and things like that. And COVID did happen in the midst of that. But even as things came back, I realized like Atlanta to me is more production and things like that. But when it comes to carpets and event, it's not as much of that. And I realized like, oh, I still want to be in the mix, and as much as I would be in the house, I still wanted to be able to go to these things and have those experiences. And so that totally like I'm so grateful I was there during, COVID, of just having a nice space, to be in, and being able to distance and stuff like that. But yeah, once the entertainment stuff picked back up, I was like, I need to either go back to New York or try out LA. And I had luckily been able to come to LA. I think I was here like 10 days or so, a long stretch. I was like, maybe I could do this. And I did go back to New York, looked at apartments. I was like, I cannot do that. I came back.
I really pay this to do this in LA to pay that to do that in New York.
That is
right?
all it came down to. But I will say, even with that though, because I realized when I moved to Atlanta too, my behavior wasn't changing, and that means a whole lot of different things. For like a lot. But even, not taking care of myself, people I was dealing with, all those things. And it was, when people were saying your life doesn't just change by moving to Atlanta, like I physically moved, but the mentality and stuff like that had not changed. And I do remember before I came to LA, it was like, you got to start making some pattern changes, some behavior changes, or else LA is not going to be enjoyable for you either. Like you're still the same you're not changing that. And so I do think the excitement and the newness of a new place can help motivate, but you also like got to keep reminding yourself. And I think it has to start before you pick up, a move. You don't plop down and like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym every day now because it's new, it's a choice. And it's a discipline, more than anything. And so, yeah, that definitely helps the newness, but it's an internal change too.
You said something about you still wanted to be in the mix, right? Because Atlanta didn't have all that you really wanted, right?
Yeah.
How did you like? I often tell myself, I like when I think about like what's my why? Why am I doing this? Of course, I love interviewing people. That's a fact. But part of me also does like the thrill of being the one to interview famous people, right? Or just being the one who gets to be invited to things. And sometimes I feel guilty. I'm like, is that selfish of me to also like this part? Like, can I have like these dreams that may not seem like, I'm not saving the world by interviewing, like, let's say Beyonce one day, right? But at the same time, it is my own personal dream and it's okay to have things that don't always have to be tied to something greater, right?
Yes.
And I feel like as Black women sometimes, I feel like, I always have to have like a bigger reason, a larger why. But it could just be, I want to be invited to some events and get some good goodie bags someday.
Exactly. I want to enjoy it. Yes, I agree. And it's funny because I kind of joke sometimes. I was like, I think God gave me this job because he knew I was always going to be poor.
But I didn't have to pay for no beauty products because, they always sending you your beauty products. I have not bought shampoo in about 3 years, girl.
Literally, duh. God bless y'all. Like it just so is. It is like I think it's part of quality of life. Like those things are important too. Of just enjoying things. Talk about soft girl era, all that. Kind of stuff. It does enhance your quality of life, and I don't think we should feel guilty. Yeah.
Yeah, so as you know, we are approaching time. I just want to make sure that, I have a little section called, I just made it up today. It might not be called this during the actual when I edit this. It's called Toot Your Horn. I've been trying to like think of like different car metaphors of just like, this is the part where you can, I'm Jamaican, so we say big up yourself, right? Like,
I love that.
Do that stuff that I feel like we often don't just sit back at our accomplishments and just say, I did that. All right. So I have a quick little list of things and I want you to toot your horn. All right. So either tell us your best advice or tell us the best moment. Best interview you ever had, or your favorite, maybe favorite.
I'm gonna say Nia Long, for the Hollywood Reporter. When I talked to her about her separation and her relationship story, I think because she was so open, and I remember afterwards she was like, "I was so nervous coming here to talk to you, and like you made me feel so comfortable," and so that was a definite peak, and again, like affirmation.
Okay. Brandy is a badass at.
Mm. Honoring my commitments. Honoring my
Okay.
commitments. Yeah, if I say I'm gonna do something 99% of the time, I'm gonna do it.
Okay. And this one is the best advice you've ever received from a loved one. So somebody who knows you.
When I was a kid, I had a babysitter and her husband, and he was saying, pay yourself before you pay anybody else. And I think, we can look at that in different ways, like monetarily. I think he meant it for sure, but also like pour into yourself, before you're giving it out to other people. I've certainly been guilty of that and work on that constantly. And I do think you need to pay yourself before you pay anybody else.
Okay. And if you want to be a dream driver, Brandon, you have to have your keys to success. So I want you to tell me 3 things that you think every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road.
Okay. One we talked about earlier, which I think is confidence. Everything starts with how you feel about yourself, whether you believe in yourself, you believe in what it is you want to do. I think number 2 is resilience. Like nobody's road is just a constant, ascent. And it's going to be a lot of peaks and valleys, and you're going to have to, pick yourself back up after that. And I think the third part then is persistence. I think sometimes resilience, you bounce back, but you're like, but I'm never doing that again, or I'm not going to pursue that again. But then you never, you're always, I think, can be left with regret. I didn't see what would happen if I kept going. And it's going to be no, sometimes there's going to be people who don't get it. And also those quote unquote rejections don't even always have anything to do with you. So many times people are like, I don't even have budget. Like it's not it's about
It's like I
you.
want to, but girl, I can't, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Nothing's wrong with your idea, nothing's wrong with you. And so being persistent so that you do come across, that right person or that right sponsor or investor or anything in what you're doing. So I think those would be my 3.
I couldn't not have you on the show and not ask you this question, but you've been able to be at the helm in different media companies, different perspectives. What do you see, or what advice would you give to others who are trying to either make it as a journalist, some part of media, about what it really takes to succeed, especially in this age of social media and influencers? Because I feel like there might be people who are like social media famous, but they are not journalists. They are not media professionals, right? So like, how would you navigate that? If you had a little sister coming up or a little brother, like what would you tell them about how to navigate this industry?
Yeah, I think the first thing would be to build your skills out in different areas. Even when I think about red carpets, sometimes like, do you do edits too? Do like if you can pick up some recording skills or even just knowing how to, do a small edit, getting your own audio together, things like that. I think just the more skills you have in more areas are going to be more valuable because people are hiring one person to do 3 jobs, at this point. So I think that's a very key. Um, I think also working on the base skills of journalism. I think it's hard when you do see someone who's not an expert in that field or trained in that getting opportunities. It's like, well, why do I need to do that? But I do think the more that like AI and things come about, I think we're going to see a need again to be able to really determine what is fact-based, information that's being spread. We're in a huge age of misinformation. And I think we're still going to need those people who can report actual facts in a way that people can receive and digest. And so I would say continue to still work on those skills, those reporting skills. And I think it's really important to do that, while you're in college. When you come out, you have something that you can show. Like that gives you a leg up on other students who might just be going through classes. They're not writing anything. They're not doing any interviews. And I think reach out. I've had a couple of people reach out to me for like advice, and some like were interested in like sports journalism, and I connected them with some journalists I know one like that kind of an opportunity to like report and stuff like that. Like people do want to help. And I always was too kind of scared to like reach out to editors and ask for advice. Or,
you were scared? It's like, it's
girl,
funny. I love hearing you just admit that, because in my head, I'm like, you have nerves too. Like you have like all these people at your fingertips, but you still, it's just the natural human part. Like even the people at the top are nervous. So
exactly. Yep. And just do it. People generally want to help. Sometimes they're overburdened, and can't in the moment. And again, don't take that personally. But people are always looking for talent as well in that. So I think expand your network, early, but be about the work, as you're doing that. I don't think this is an industry where it's just who you know, it's also what you know how to do. And I don't think enough people put effort into knowing how to do, what they say they want to do as well.
Well, thank you so much, Brande. This has been such an amazing time being able to chat with you. I'm happy that we're able to connect. I think it's our first time actually talking, but I'm happy that we're able to connect. I feel the energy, reciprocal energy going on. Tell our listeners where they can find you online if they want to check out your work. And also Brande's website, if you want to just see everything that she has done. I love that you have it up to date. That's another tip. Make sure you have your portfolio up to date, because people are looking, right? And people are inspired, and you can get there might be someone listening who says, I need Brande on my team. So you never know.
Right. Yes. And it's also a great confidence booster. You forget all the things that you've done. And when you take time to update that LinkedIn, your website, you're like, I can do this, apply for that job, whatever. So it's BrandeVictorian.com. Is my website, BVic. I'm on Instagram and X, so BE_VIC. Would love to connect with you all. And thank you so much. Like this really brightens my morning. It makes me feel good. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. That was my hope. I always want to make sure everyone who comes in this virtual chair just like remembers all that they did, right? The actual drive to put their dreams into motion. Sometimes we're so busy driving, we forgot where we've gone. We forgot where we've come from, right? And just being able to reflect on that. People always say afterwards, like, wow, like I re-inspired myself, right? It's like, I'm a bad bee out here in these streets.
Exactly. Thank you for that gift.
Thank you again. This little one, my house guest just woke up again, so it was a good timing. He's looking at me like, Ma, like, why you just rocking this with my feet, right? I'm rocking his little rocker with my feet. This is also the good thing about, I feel like COVID made virtual interviewing all right. And like you can still get these great interviews and not have to do them in person and still get that quality content. So,
Yes. Kudos to you for keeping it going.
Thank you. I'm like, listen, I gotta make it happen. No one's here to watch him. And I'm just like, he don't take a bottle. I can't send him nowhere. It's just like, we gotta work in that bottle taking tips. And once he gets older, it's gonna be harder to do it. All right, so that's a wrap for this episode of Dreams and Drive. I hope you enjoyed our guest's dream driving journey as well as listening to their keys to success. If you love this episode, you know what to do. Please make sure that you are following us. We are at Dreams and Drive across social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So make sure you're sharing this episode, posting it to your Instagram stories, texting it to a friend, sharing on LinkedIn, wherever you are or online. Just pay this forward and share this with somebody. We really appreciate it. And all the sharing that you do helps us grow our community. If you want to join our email newsletter, The Keys, and get weekly updates delivered to your inbox, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. That's dreamsanddrive.com/join. And lastly, if you know somebody who would be great for this show, or if you are someone who would be great for this show, please go to dreamsanddrive.com/pitch. I'm always accepting new guests. I'm always accepting new pitches. So I love to see those pitch requests coming in. Keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again in the next episode. Bye, guys.